Hello. Welcome to VUU. If we could, would you please join me in a song? Please stand. Rock of Ages. Rock of Ages, hear it our song. Praise your saving power. You amidst the raging foe were our sheltering tower. Raising thee assailed us, but your arm availed us, and your word broke their sword when our own strength failed us. Kindling new the holy lamps, reason bound by suffering, purified the nation shine, brought the garner offering, and in lands surrounding, hear the joy abounding. Happy songs, singing songs, with a mighty sounding. Children of the prophet's word, whether free or fettered, wake the echoes of the songs where you may be scattered. Yours the message cheering that the time is nearing, which shall see nations free, tyrants disappearing.
Nations free and tyrants disappearing. We pray for, strive for that day. We come in this season of light to reflect on the holiday of Hanukkah. In the words of Reverend Lynn Unger, may we welcome this holiday season with the untold power of those fragile lights, with the miracle of all we create, and the miracle of all that is created, for which we can only offer thanks and praise. May the gentle flames of Hanukkah guide us to see by a different light, beyond the harsh light of reality and past the glitzy sparkle of pretense, into the warm glow that we call faith and hope and love. Come, let us worship together. Please read in unison with me our chalice lighting words. We kindle this flame,
symbol of our faith, for the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of love, which calls us to work for justice.
Materials to prepare today. Sorry. All right. Hello, everybody. Hi. Hello, my name is Regina. Thank you for joining us here today. If you're visiting, please stand as you're able so that we can welcome you more fully. Thank you. Thank you so much for standing. We all know that that takes courage, and we're really happy that you're here. There's a welcome circle in the back of the sanctuary to offer additional welcomes and answer any questions you may have about UUism or VUU or just like life in general. There's a comfort room over here, and the comfort room is for children, adults, whomever might need a little bit of a break with the speaker so you won't miss anything in the service. And after the service, we'll have refreshments in the back of the sanctuary because it's just too cold to be outside right now. And they'll be available in the back, and there's coffee and tea and everything. Lastly, should you need a listening ear, we have a lay pastoral care associate available, and her name is Janet Cantley. Janet, there she is. Thank you, Janet. And she'll meet you right here to the over here by the door, should you need a listening ear after the service. Okay. Today, I have adapted my welcome in part from a children's book called All Are Welcome by Suzanne Kaufman. It's Lily's book. She was not very happy that she didn't get to read it with me, but I'll read it to her again tonight. No matter how you start your day, what you wear when you play, or if you come from far away, all are welcome here. In our community, safe and sound, fears are lost and hope is found. Raise your hand, we'll go around. All are welcome here. Gather now, let's all take part. We'll play music and we'll make art. We'll share our stories from the heart. All are welcome here. We are part of a community. Our strength is our diversity, a shelter from adversity. All are welcome here. Our time together is the best. All are welcome here. I've chosen this book because I feel it most accurately describes our community here at VUU, one that welcomes you as you are and for who you are, and not regardless of your person, but because that's exactly who you are, because you are exactly the person that we need. I love VUU. Sorry. In the past few years, it has given our family and so many others a place to call home and provided support, love, and hope. As a community, we've rallied to provide... Ooh, that was not good. Let me start again. As a community, we've rallied to provide support to migrants and the homeless, the LGBTQ plus community, and so many others. We've welcomed and supported our members in sickness, health, and celebration. We have grown, discovered, and lit a candle every single Sunday for unity, hope, and love. In 2019, when so many things felt like they were going very wrong, VUU felt like things were going right. I'm honored to have spent 2019 with this community and even more excited to see where 2020 brings us. Thank you and welcome.
Please rise and sing about lighting a candle. There you go. Light one candle for the Maccabee children, the things that did die didn't die. Light one candle for the pain they endured when their right to exist was denied. Light one candle for the terrible sacrifice justice and freedom demand. And light one candle for all who know when the peacemaker's time is at hand. Don't let the light go out. It's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out. Let it shine through our love and our tears. Light one candle for the strength that we need to never become our own foe. Light one candle for those who are suffering, healed long ago. Light one candle for all we believe in, that anger won't tear us apart. And light one candle to bring us together with peace as a song in our heart. Don't let the light go out. It's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out. The Lord, our love and our tears. What is the memory that's valued so highly? We keep alive in that flame. What's the commitment to those who have died when we are that they've died in vain? Have we come this far and always believing that justice would somehow prevail? And this is the burden, and this is the promise, and this is why we will not fail. Don't let the light go out. It's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out. Let it shine through our love and our tears.
And that's the end of that. Well, I want to get a date on your radar. And that's January 26th. Have been talking with our friend Roy Tatum, who's president of the East Valley NAACP, and Roy is going to be here on January 26th. We're not quite sure what that's going to look like yet. I think he and I will probably share the pulpit, and maybe we'll do a forum after the service as well. He and I are meeting to plan next week, so we'll know more pretty soon. But January 26th, I hope you'll be able to be here as we explore race and racial justice and what it looks like in the Valley particularly, but also nationwide and where we're headed in the next few years. Well, as the ushers prepare to receive this morning's offering, I would just remind you quickly that we're wrapping up the annual Stewardship campaign. That's the campaign where your pledges allow us to know what to budget and how to plan the programs and other things in the coming congregational year. If you haven't filled out a pledge card yet, please do so. There are some in the back, and you can drop them in the box there. But as always, thank you for all the forms that your generosity takes, from the time that you give, both in this congregation and in the community, to your finances, all the talents that you lend to make this community what it is. Thank you for your generosity. We're going to move now into a time of meditation, a time of prayer. So I would invite you to get comfortable in your chair and to remember that in this season of light, as hectic as it can be sometimes, it's important still to still ourselves and to spend time in relative quiet. And so we're going to sing together, and then we'll spend some time in quiet and prayer, and then the bells will play us out of that time together.
Find a stillness, hold a stillness, let the stillness carry me. Find the silence, hold the silence, let the silence carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, will I fire it, giving power. I will find true harmony. Seek the essence, hold the essence, let the essence carry me. Let me flower, help me flower, want me flower, carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony.
On this last day of Hanukkah, let's take a moment to reflect on the light in our spirits. One of the important messages from our transcendentalist foreparents was that the divine is contained not somewhere outside us, but within each of us, there to connect us to one another. The light of hope that often keeps burning when it seems there's no justification is present and available in our spirits. So please join me in silent reflection on the light of hope. The light of hope is fueled in part by the young people in our community, our children across the parking lot today who are celebrating the holidays together. We pray that in the coming year they will grow and that we will do our work as a community, nurturing them in the values of love and justice, kindness, and compassion. We pray for love to increase in the coming decade. May there be a growing sense that we really are all in this together, that a hole at one end of our shared boat will sink us all, no matter how much money anyone has. We pray that in the year to come, little ones will be born into safe and nurturing environments, that communities like this one will offer support to those who mourn, including the families of the approximately 15,000 people who have died from gun violence in the United States this year. We pray that our elected leaders will begin to take this epidemic seriously and soon. Ultimately, we pray that the love we put into the world will change it for the better, that the light of hope will continue to burn in our spirits and will be kindled in our communities. May it be so. Amen. We're heading into a brand new decade in just a few days. The casino near my house is advertising a soaring 20s party. After the decade we've just been through, I think that's a pretty bold name choice. The 2010s weren't all bad. Of course. There were miracles, in fact. The Cubs won the World Series. And settle down. Even this St. Louis Cardinals fan can give a nod to them for finally winning. It's easier to say that since they're really bad again and the world is as it should be. Good news abounded in the 2010s, as a matter of fact. At least I am pretty happy that the first iPad was released. And on a more serious note, as Nicholas Kristof reported in his column in the New York Times yesterday, the 10s saw the continued decline of infant mortality, of illiteracy, and a slew of deadly diseases. 10s also proved to be a big decade for people here fighting for their power. The Me Too movement began to hold men accountable for, sometimes for decades of abuse. Millions of people attended women's marches in D.C. and around the country. Yeah. The 2010s saw the rise of Black Lives Matter, the legalization of same-gender marriage in 18 countries, including ours. And in January of this year, the most diverse class ever was sworn into Congress. Some pretty good stuff happened. Oppressive systems are crumbling. If we look at the sweep, if we look at what Theodore Parker, the Unitarian minister, talked about as the moral arc of the universe, maybe it really is bending toward justice. It seems to me the 2016 election and Brexit and some other events worldwide are at least in part reactions to some of the growth that was experienced in the 2010s. They're an effort to take us, and then they say this clearly, they're an effort to take us back to the way things were before. But a lot more of us don't have any interest in going back to a world in which people of color were oppressed under the law. Millions of people couldn't marry the ones they loved, and most of our representatives were older white guys. Really, I think we just aren't going back. But self-determination is usually won, not given. And that means things could get worse before they get better. We head into a presidential election year with a great deal of uncertainty. We do know one thing, though. We'll have to address the effects of climate change with more seriousness in the coming decade. And who our politicians are will have great bearing on that concern. We Unitarian Universalists, whose principles include affirming and caring for the interdependent web of all existence, have work ahead of us. That'll also include protecting the voting rights of millions of people who are sometimes being removed from voting rolls without their knowledge. And in the middle of all that intense struggle, in 2020, life will go on. Every age is an age of turmoil, and every age is an age of progress. And if we only focus on what isn't right or on some imagined future, we'll miss out on living. In the 20s, people will be born and people will die. They'll fall in love and be married, and they will separate. Some will earn their fortunes and others will lose it all. Most of us will quietly live out lives containing great joy and sometimes heart-rending sorrow. Life will simply go on. So this last Sunday in 2019 and this last evening tonight of Hanukkah have me wondering, how should I think about this big turning of the year and turning of the decade? I think the Hanukkah story has some clues to help, though maybe not the clues that we usually hear about. The Hanukkah story takes place around 175 BCE. A time of great political and economic turmoil. Antiochus Epiphanes ruled the Seleucid Empire, which had taken control of Israel, including Israel's religious center, Jerusalem. And that might not have been so bad. In fact, Epiphanes' father was a sort of gracious, well-regarded ruler. And Israel had been occupied for most of its ancient history. So that was nothing new, but the way in which Epiphanes occupied was terribly oppressive. He loved, it seems, to provoke people. And so, without regard for the fierce religious nature of many of the Jewish people, he built a gymnasium in Israel, a Greek symbol for fitness and philosophical learning that felt like a slap in the face to the people of Israel. And worst of all, he desecrated the temple. He removed all the gold from the place where the Jews taught God's presence rested. In 168 BCE, Epiphanes' soldiers marched in a parade into Jerusalem and set an image of Zeus, a Greek god, on Israel's altar. They sacrificed pigs in the temple, pigs being an unclean animal, and immediately outlawed the practice of Jewish religion. Surely a sanctuary full of Unitarian Universalists can appreciate the Israelites' desire to worship whom they please rather than being forced to worship the God the people around them worshipped. And we can understand, I would imagine, why a small band of Israeli fighters decided they would resist. Now, this was the ultimate underdog battle. A few thousand people with rudimentary weapons against elephants and hundreds of thousands of soldiers with the most advanced weapons and one of the largest economies of the time to fund them. Battle waged for 3 years, and frankly, that in itself was a miracle, that it went on that long. 3 years of fighting against an enemy that seemed invincible. A few times the Jewish fighters thought they had defeated the Syrians only to be attacked again, but some smart political moves, including an alliance with Rome, and some fierce fighting helped the Jewish fighters drive out Epiphanes. And at the end of the fighting, the Jews re-entered the temple. Imagine what that was like. It must have been a shattering sight, this statue of Zeus, the remnants of the slaughter of pigs, the missing gold implements, all reminders of their oppression. But they rolled up their sleeves and they got to work cleaning up the temple. And as the story goes, there was only enough pure olive oil for a few hours, maybe a day, but they lit the sacred lamp anyway. And that oil burned somehow for 8 days, long enough for them to find a greater supply of oil for the temple restoration. So the Jewish people rededicated their temple and its altar to their own God. And it was decided that every year for 8 days the Jewish people would celebrate Hanukkah, the rededication of the temple. And every year during Hanukkah, all over the world, people light small lights and give gifts and eat ceremonial foods, often fried in oil, for 8 days, remembering that sometimes the underdog wins. Sometimes what looks to be inevitable isn't, if only we'll band together, raggedy and tattered though we may be. I'm sorry if you're not a sports fan, but this time of year, there are lots and lots of football and basketball games. And millions of people watch them. I sat on my couch last night and watched 2 teams that I don't really care that much about. And I was riveted. Why? Because I like to see the underdog win. I had a taste of that earlier this year. I graduated from the University of Evansville, which is one of the smallest teams, one of the smallest schools in Division I sports. The last time our basketball team was in the NCAA tournament was in the 90s. But we hired a new coach, and we're all very excited, thinking we might be good enough to beat like Murray State or even Wichita State. That seemed like a big dream, but our hopes are pretty humble. But a few weeks ago, the tiny Evansville Purple Aces beat Kentucky, at the time the number 1 rated basketball team in the country. Our guys were on ESPN. Yeah. Oh, I'll pass that on to our alumni group here in Phoenix. They'll be glad to hear that you applauded that. The day after UE beat Kentucky, all of us alumni from around the world were posting photos with our Evansville gear, some of it a decade old, bragging about having the best basketball team in the country. As a Christmas gift, I received from my brother-in-law a framed copy of the Evansville newspaper proclaiming the unbelievable victory of the Purple Aces. There's no need to talk about how they've done since then. For that moment, the underdog beat the bad guys. I figure we're all underdogs one way or another. A doctor's diagnosis puts us on the defense against a frightening disease, or a child struggles and we don't know how to help. A relationship is on the rocks and it's not clear that it can last. Of course, it doesn't always end up an underdog victory. But to stay in the fight, we have to remember that it's possible. That even on long odds, great things can happen if we keep plugging, if we stay faithful. It's one of the tenets of liberal religion, as a matter of fact, that all the resources that we need to achieve the goals that we have in liberal religion, all the resources we need are available to us. Ultimately, there's reason to be hopeful. We will need, I think, to keep that in mind. In addition to the personal wins and losses we all experience, in the decade to come, we're going to continue facing some of the greatest challenges humanity has ever known. Now, for sure, the idea that the earth could be destroyed by human action isn't brand new. People alive in the 40s and 50s and 60s remember hiding under their school desks, preparing for a nuclear bomb. But these days, we're watching the slow unfolding of the consequences of human greed. Hurricanes are stronger and more frequent. The ice caps are melting at an alarming rate, and just about every year is warmer than the one before. There is increasingly no escaping the truth that the climate is changing drastically. I believe that is the background noise for everything else we do. The world is anxious. People are migrating because the climate is changing. Some are fighting to take things back to the way they used to be. They're building fences to stop the flow, as if that would work, hoping that in so doing they can make the world more safe. Other people fight for fast, whole system change, again, in hopes that the world will be safer. These are not easy. The world needs dedicated, scrappy fighters. But none of us can do everything. So I'm asking myself a few questions these days as I try to engage the struggle against climate change and greed and xenophobia, the things that are endangering all of us. First, I've been asking, where do I want to place my energy? For me, I want to advocate for transgender rights. I want to promote vegan and vegetarian eating as an act to combat climate change and animal cruelty.